Welcome to the Faculty of Engineering and Computer Science at the University of Victoria. My name is Leanne Galinsky, and I do admissions and advising for the Bachelor of Engineering, Bachelor of Software Engineering programs. And in this video, I will provide some helpful information on how to develop your registration plan. My presentation is focused primarily on the first year Bachelor of Engineering and Bachelor of Software Engineering programs. However, if you find yourself here as a student that's just entering the Faculty of Engineering and Computer Science, perhaps in second year, perhaps in a different program, hopefully you'll still find some of this information useful. In this presentation, I will cover how to plan your courses, some common mistakes, and some frequently asked questions. I'll also spend some time talking about time management and asking you to think about how things are going to change when you start in university. This planning session doesn't replace the Registration 101 webinars that teach you how to use the registration system. You should plan to attend one of those how-to webinars and watch the videos that they also provide on that site. Those sessions start later this month. And if you've not already signed up for one of the Registration 101 webinars, you should do so right away. And what I'll do right now is I'll quickly share my screen and I'll show you how to find that information. This is the main university website that I'm showing you right now. And quite simply, if you use that sharing tool or the searching tool up here, then just up in that search bar, you can type Registration 101 and it will take you to this website here. And you'll see the program planning session is the one that you're in right now, but the course registration sessions, you'll just choose one that's appropriate to the type of student that you are. I'm just going to choose, I'm a Canadian high school applicant, and you'll see the dates and the times that they start, and you can register for one of those sessions, and you should do so right away if you haven't already done so. This next part is about program planning forms. All programs at the University of Victoria have program planning forms. These are essentially easy to use checklists of program requirements that students can use as a guide. We have a program planning form for each one of our programs and one specifically designed for first year. And all of those forms can be found on our website. And I'm going to take you there in just a moment. The first year program planning forms shows the standard 2-term schedule with the entire first year program done in 8 months. We also show a sample of the 3-term schedule for showing a reduction of course load and spreading out of the first year program over 3 terms as opposed to 2. This allows for a modest reduction of course load in each term, and it pushes some of the courses into the summer session. And the 3-term schedule does assume that the student will be in Victoria, on campus in Victoria. And on the program planning form, you'll see all of the first year requirements for both the Bachelor of Engineering and Bachelor of Software Engineering program. There is a difference, small difference between the curriculum of those two programs, the disciplines of the Bachelor of Engineering and then the Bachelor of Software Engineering. Specifically, the Bachelor of Software Engineering program does differ by 2 courses. It shows the second programming course is prioritized in the second term. And courses like ENGIR 141, the statics course, is not required for software engineering, but it is required for the Bachelor of Engineering programs. And just a quick note about that, if you're not sure what area of engineering it is that you want when you are first registering, my advice is to follow the program for the first year Bachelor of Engineering programs. And if you do decide that you want software engineering, there's plenty of time to switch later. So I'm just going to quickly show you on our website how to find that information. And I'm just going to share my screen. I'm going to take you to here. And I will show you again. Here's the main University of Victoria website. If you go again up into the little search, go search for engineering. Helps if I can spell it properly. Just one second. And this is our website here. So there's our main homepage right there. Lots of information across the top. You'll probably spend lots of your time in students. There's lots of information here for students and where you're going to find program planning forms. I would say look under academic supports. This tells you a bit more information here about the names of who the advisors are, how to contact advising. We also have peer advisors. But I'm going to go back to program planning worksheets here. So again, how I mentioned that we had program planning worksheets for all of the different programs that we have. And here's the one for first year. Okay, so as I mentioned before, you can see how the courses are spread out over the fall and spring terms with the summer off, or potentially that first work term can happen there. And then these are the suggestions for spreading the courses out over 3 terms for a workload reduction. And this is what I was talking about with regards to the software engineering. There's that second programming course, Computer Science 115 that I mentioned. How it doesn't have, Bachelor of Engineering has ENGIR 141. Software engineering does not. They're balanced. So we're interjecting a 115 in here, Computer Science 115. They're doing a natural science elective. There's links to what those are. And then again, the suggested course load reduction for a 3rd term schedule. There's also some notes here on the back about a few different things, and I'm going to come back to that. One of the courses that you do in first year, all of the programs, is ENGIR 130. You'll see that in both of those suggestions, all of those suggestions. ENGIR 130 is the professional practices course. This has lots of information in it about the mandatory co-op program for that's part of the Bachelor of Engineering, Bachelor of Software Engineering programs. That is where a lot of your questions will be answered about the placement process, what your role is as the student, engineering co-op coordinator's role, the role of the employer. But that's the first place where you'll get a lot of your co-op questions answered is in ENGIR 130. And as you can see, it is part of your course enrollment in that first term. Next, I'll talk a little bit about academic advising. Academic advisors and the engineering undergraduate office can provide advice and explain university and faculty regulations. We can refer you to services and supports on campus, and we're happy to provide you with information to help you make decisions. What advisors cannot do for you, however, is we cannot make decisions for you. We aren't personal counselors or career counselors, but there are services on campus that provide those services. We have a full student wellness center to provide personal counseling and other health counseling as well as access to doctors and nurses. And we also have career counselors, and those are individuals that are more to do with career exploration, career planning, determining the right program that's right for you, and with regards to future employment. And we're happy to refer you to those individuals. We offer information sessions like this for various different types of things throughout the year. Academic advising sessions, program planning information can all be done through our office. But we also have, when it gets around to program declaration time, we have information sessions like that. We can provide referrals to other offices on campus for other services or learning supports that you may require. So that is essentially what academic advisors do. This next part, I want to talk about a few common mistakes and maybe some frequently asked questions about the registration process in a couple of the courses, and it comes up every term, so every year. So I thought I would just point them out now. When you are doing your searches when you're selecting your courses, and I'll show you a little bit about how to do that, but they will cover that way more in the 101 webinars that you'll end up doing about the searching the system and adding the courses. Some students make the common mistake of just looking for ENGIR courses when they're starting their registration. So using the prefix of ENGR when they're looking for all of their courses, because they figure that all of the engineering courses will start with that. And that is not how the program is structured and we'll go back to the first year program planning form, but math courses are listed under math, physics courses are listed under physics. NJER 141, the NJER one that is a Faculty of Engineering course is listed under NJER. Computer science courses are listed under computer science. So you want to kind of pay attention to this subject domain when you're looking for the courses. The other thing that you will also do is when you're registering for your courses, you register for all of the components, lectures, labs, and tutorials. So just registering the lectures is not a complete timetable. You do need to make sure that you're looking for lectures, labs, and tutorials. Again, Registration 101 will tell you more about that, but it does happen very commonly that students will just add lecture sections and forget to add the labs and tutorials. The other common thing that happens all the time is students will encounter a field of study error or a major restriction error. And when you attempt to register a particular section of a course, and it will tell you that it's a field of study error that you can't access it. And that information is all housed in the course catalog information. But usually when students encounter an error like that, they just sort of stop and they think that oh God, I've done something wrong. You haven't. You just need to drill down into the information about that section and figure out why it is you're being screened from it. And I'm going to show you some examples of that. The primary piece of information on here is a question about Math 100 versus 109. Sometimes we'll get questions about that. And how do you know which one to pick? There's great information on the math department's website about first year calculus courses. But essentially, the two acceptable math courses of Calc 1 for our program is either Math 100 or 109. And quite simply, it's either do you have a pre-exposure to calculus already by virtue of, say, potentially Calc 12 or something like that? Then Math 100 is probably perfectly fine for you. Math 109 assumes that you've just taken pre-calculus 12 and have no pre-exposure to calculus at all. Essentially, some of the beginning parts of the courses are a little bit different from the standpoint that Math 109 assumes that you know nothing about calculus and have not had that pre-exposure. So some of the terminology is a little bit different. They make no assumptions about what it is that you already know, and then eventually, for all intents and purposes, after the first few weeks of classes, the courses are the same, but it just is a bit of a slower start in the beginning because it makes no assumptions that students have had any pre-exposure to calculus, and that's the difference between 100 or 109. And like I said, there's a lot more information on the math department's website about that, but that is the short version of how to pick which one it is that you do. Another piece of information on there is, I promised to show you a bit of information about the registration error, but I just wanted to talk a little bit more about academic writing versus NJER 110. That's another commonly asked question that we get. And some students all university programs require that students satisfy academic writing, an academic writing requirement. Our academic writing requirement is embedded in NJER 110. Also, students are not exempted from Engineering 110 by virtue of high school English. So if you've got an A in English 12, congratulations, but it doesn't exempt you from a university program requirement where it's specifically listed in your program requirements, and it is for us, and it's NJER 110. The only other notable exception might be is that some students have taken an academic writing university credit eligible course while they were in high school. Potentially, if you were at a U Victoria high school and you took a college level English course through Camosun College or something like that, potentially that could be creditable for first year academic writing, but you have to submit that transcript. But the short version is that you're not exempted from NG 110 based on English 12. I now want to navigate over to where I promised you to show you about registration errors. I'm quickly just going to show you an example here. I'm going to search for the timetable. Course timetable. So this is, again, 101 is going to show you all about this, but I just want to quickly show you, and I'm going to have to use the summer as an example because the fall and next winter's timetable is not published yet. But let's say I want to register in a computer science course. So I'm going to type in subject, CSC, and I'm going to type in, say, 110, because I happen to know that that's offered in the summer. I often find when doing a search, less is more. So don't start sorting out too much more stuff. Just type in the subject, the course number that you're looking for, hit search, and the system is going to bring up all sections, lectures, labs, and tutorials where they exist for that course that you've just done a search on. And you will see that there are 2 lecture sections offered in, like I said, I use the summer as an example. And so the basic information is when is the course meeting, the number of seats and things like that available that's still in it. But so this is where it gets interesting. If you go over to the title of the course, this is especially if you get a field of study restriction error, or if you just want to know more about this section, if you go over to the title of the course and click it, you will get an information box that pops up about this section. And it tells you notes about the course. Great. Oh, it's reserved for students in the computer science major. Students in other programs must register in AO2. So there's some hints there. This will tell you how many people are enrolled in it, what's the course, that section maximum, and the number of seats that are still available, and if there is a wait list available or if it's full. Enrollment restrictions. This gives you a bit more information about what that first little part said. This section, a student must be an undergraduate student to register in it. Great. But then they also must be enrolled in one of the following fields of study. So this is restricted to students that are enrolled in the computer science program or one of the various combined degree programs with computer science. So as an engineering student, you can't register in this section. That's why if you try, you will get a field of study restriction, okay? And that's essentially what that means. There's other information here, class details, etc. Tells you a bit more about that section, but that's essentially how you access that information. So if I were an engineering student wanting to register in this course, I'm going to go over to the AO2 because when I look at the enrollment restriction for this section, I have to be an undergraduate student. Fantastic, I am. And I cannot be enrolled in one of the following fields of study. So I can't be a computer science student and I can't be in one of any of the combined degree programs. Great. Because I am not one of those students, as a Bachelor of Engineering student, I can register in this section. So that is how you read field of study restrictions. The other thing that students do, which it might not necessarily be 100% obvious at the time, but you're going to register for both your fall and spring term courses on the date of when you're allowed to start registering for next year. You're going to register for both your fall and spring term courses. So the common error that students do is they register for just fall, but you're authorized for the entire winter session when you are authorized to register. So obviously you're going to work on your fall first and get that together, and then you can register or waitlist for stuff for the spring session as well. What you don't do, obviously, is the summer session next summer is not, you don't register for that as part of the 3-term schedule. You register for just the winter session, which is fall term and spring term, and then summer session registration takes place around mid-March for the following summer. So again, the common error that students will do is just register for fall, thinking that they need to register for their January through April term courses later, but you don't. You're authorized for the entire winter session when you register. The other thing, commonly asked question that we get about that is, when is my tuition due? So the fact that you've registered for the entire winter session doesn't mean that your tuition is due immediately for that entire winter session. Your fall term course registration tuition is due by the end of September, and your January through April term tuition is assessed at the end of January. So again, the fact that you've registered for the whole winter session doesn't mean that you're paying for all of it all at once. I've already talked about the NJR 110 issues. And so I think that's about it with regards to sort of registration tips and common errors. So what are the key takeaways from that? You're not exempted from NJR 110 based on high school English. You're registered for either 109 math or 100 math, depending upon whether or not you've taken calculus or pre-calculus. You register for both fall and spring terms when you're authorized to register on your registration date and time. Make sure that you register for all components, lectures, labs, and tutorials, and it needs to be conflict-free. Again, Registration 101 will do a much better job of explaining all of that, but those are the common issues that we see. This is actually a part of my presentation today that I really spent a lot of time thinking about because, quite frankly, it is the registering and the planning for the registering of our program is really not that complicated because so much of the first year program is prescribed. These are the courses that you take. Your real thinking process is about how much work do I want to take on initially when I'm first making this transition from high school to university. So previously I talked about the first year program planning form and the example of the 2 terms and 3 term schedules. Right now, you're probably thinking that I think I'm going to plan to take my first year in the full schedule, fall term, spring term, plan for that first work term in the first summer, maybe take that first summer off. And it would be reasonable for you to think that. Many first year students do. Here's the part that I want you to think about. You are probably expecting that everything about university life will be different, and you'll be right. Whether you're moving across the street, across the country, or across the world to be here at UVic, you will find adjusting to the university learning environment, it will require some changes and changing your expectations and the way that you study. You might be aware of that, perhaps, but I do want to contextualize that for you, if I may. Understand that attending class is about 25% of the effort that you need in order to be able to thrive at the university environment. I want to show you an example of a schedule that I kind of mapped out, and I want you to see what it is that you might not necessarily first see when you schedule your courses. So here is a sample, and I just pulled it out of a student's timetable, just to show you an example. So you'll see the blocks that are actually, this is the timetable that is produced when you schedule your courses. You'll be able to find this in your Manage Registration tab when you learn about that. So you'll see how this individual has scheduled engineering chemistry, design and communications, introductory physics. It says Calc 2 because this happens to be a second term schedule because fall term schedules were all closed when I did this. So design and communication. Oh, look, that's been mentioned 3 times now. Isn't that interesting? There's an engineering chemistry up here, but there's also an engineering chemistry down here. What is that? Engineering mechanics, design and communications. Oh my goodness, that's been mentioned 4 times now in this timetable. So the one piece of this that you need to understand, because remember how I talked about lectures, labs, and tutorials, and the reason why, say, this is mentioned here and this is mentioned here is because engineering chemistry, this is the lecture. This down here on the Wednesday, that's the lab. Design and communication 2, there is this is a lecture here. This is a lecture here, Tuesday later in the day. And then there's this pink thing here, Design and Communication 2. Why is that 4 times in my schedule? Because there's 3 lecture components about the communications part with the communications instructor, the design part, which is the design plenary section, the design lecture, if you will. And then there's the lab component of that. Physics, you'll see how the physics lecture meets 3 times that week, but then there's also a lab. Calculus meets 3 times in the week, and then there's a calculus tutorial. That's what that is on the Monday. So that's where that gets layered in. And when you first take a look at your schedule after you've registered it, you're going to see a whole bunch of white space where there aren't lectures and labs and tutorials scheduled. What I've done, and what you see there in the red, is where I have blocked off hours of time where you're not taking lectures, labs, and tutorials. But that is not free time, that is work time. The other thing that I've done is I've also maybe made a few suggestions there as to when you might eat something, because you don't get a lunch hour like what you did at school in high school. There isn't a mandatory break where everybody stops doing things. You are going to find time in your schedule in which to find nourishment for your body. And then the other thing is, well, that is primarily my point by showing you this, is this sample of a schedule shows when your courses meet, your lectures, labs, and tutorials, when you can do work, and when maybe you might eat something. Now you see you got a kind of an ugly day here on Thursday where it's like a little bit back to back. That might be the day where you do get potentially a little bit of a break, but it is maybe later in the day. So in between those classes, as you're walking towards buildings, maybe that's when you eat your apple or eat your granola bar. And then you get a chance to maybe grab some food. You really only need 30 minutes to eat something. And then you do have other times throughout the day to get something. What I've done in those red boxes is I have carved out anywhere, like I said, depending upon how early you want to end your Friday, I'm demonstrating and I'm showing to you there that there's about anywhere between 20 to 21 and a half hours of work time where you can do stuff for your courses. And you should be utilizing that time, because about a full-time schedule represents about 50 hours worth of work. And 50 hours worth of work is more than a full-time job. So, and you're saying 50 hours, where are you getting that from? Well, you should be spending about 9 to 10 hours per course, which is why the reduced course load comes in a lot of cases, is because you haven't spent 9 or 10 hours per course in high school. You just haven't. And you might be thinking, well, why do I need that much time for each course? So there's a basic understanding that for every hour that you spend in class, you should probably spend about 2 hours outside of class in the health and well-being of that course to do the work. And the reason, and I'll be able to describe that a little bit more later on, but the going to class is irreplaceable. One of the first things that you need to understand is that lectures impart the knowledge of a topic in a structured way. The instructor is telling you what is important about the topic that you're discussing that day in class. In classes, there are opportunities to listen to other students ask questions and for you to ask questions yourself. You cannot recreate this experience on your own, which is why it is I emphasize you need to go to class. More than likely, you've come from a learning environment where there was a lot of time allocated in class to do work, working on assignments, projects, even exam preparation in a lot of cases in high school is done during class. During the regular part of the school day, you can get so much of that done in class. And maybe in those settings as well, you may have had opportunities to submit work late. and maybe even negotiate for extra marks or something. Oh, I just want to bump up my grade by like 5% or something like that. Can I do extra work and get that graded? None of that happens at the university. So that's why I'm saying that you want to make sure that you're making good use of the time in your day where you're not sitting in class. You're actually spending that as part of your work time. And the reason why I'm suggesting that you do that is because you don't want to save all of that for at night, right? You don't want to be spending 5 and 6 hours every night sitting there because you can't concentrate for that long, for 5 and 6 hours at a straight shot. There's also probably other things that you wouldn't mind doing. I wouldn't mind hitting the gym. I wouldn't mind, when I sit down for my evening meal at night, having an opportunity to prepare it and eat it and enjoy it. Maybe spend an hour eating or something as opposed to, these shorter time frames throughout the day. So I'm just saying that you don't want to lose that time of the available time that's there during the day. Of course, there's the weekends. You'll be spending some time in the evening and on weekends and things like that, but you don't want your evenings and weekends to be all that you do is the work that you've missed, that you haven't done during the day. So I'm suggesting that you use that time appropriately. We're getting close to the end, and I really appreciate your patience to this point. There's just a few things that a few other more important, some important points that I want to give you before I wrap up here. Get a calendar. And what I mean by that is something where you can record and write down your important dates for various different things. And some students will opt to use a digital scheduling app. Some like paper calendars where they've got 1 month at a time and they stick it right above their desk where they do their studying. It doesn't matter to me what it is that you use, as long as you use a system that works for you, that you use it, and that you use it consistently every day. And in that calendar, you want to mark down from every single one of your classes, when are your due dates? When are your deadlines? When is the midterm coming up? When is your final exam? Now, at the start of term, you don't know the specific date of your final exam, but the exam period is known, from this date to this date in December and this date to this date in April. That's when I know my final exams are going to be. The final exam schedule is distributed about partway through the term. And the idea is that you want to mark down when are your deadlines, and you're going to keep adding to that, and you're going to keep looking at it and reading it and planning for it. And if you have it in a space where it's in front of you, when you're sitting down and doing your work, or something that you reference and it's definitely something that you're looking at, then you can plan to those deadlines. Work your way backwards from those deadlines, and then when the amount of time that you have leading up to those deadlines. It's critical because you cannot do this stuff in your head. Another point that I do need to point out, student records, your student record, your transcript, your advising record, all of that sort of thing, those student records are protected by the Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act. Therefore, our requirement as an institution by law is to communicate with the student. No doubt, if you're watching this presentation, you might even be watching it with one of your parents, one of your guardians, some important person in your life that helps you and supports you, and that is great. Students are welcome to include your parents in your discussion, in your thinking process or whatever. Not a problem. Some students like to sometimes include their parents with regards to advising sessions if there's something really critical and they're wanting that type of thing. Generally speaking, we don't encourage that, just from the standpoint that, it is the student that does need to manage these things. Just know that if you do need to include a parent in in some discussions. We can't communicate directly with parents, but a student can invite them to an advising session if they so choose. And if there is something that needs to be accessed by a parent, there actually is a proxy that you have to sign. But we just wanted to let you know more specifically about the Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act that does govern student records. We cannot give that information to anybody but the student. Another thing that I wanted to say is as you move into the university community, you are forming a new relationship. You're a social contract, if you will. The social contract is amongst you, the university, and your instructors. The university, if you think about that relationship, the university publishes the academic calendar with the program requirements in it, the regulations and the policies. The university provides the resources and the infrastructure, the place that you come to do your degree, your community, if you will. Your instructor develops the course material, breaks it down by topic, structures the lectures, and develops the course site where the materials are all published. That's called Brightspace, by the way. So you will have a Brightspace site for every course that you're registered in. And you should be learning how to use Brightspace. You'll probably hear a bit more about that as well in the Registration 101, but I'm also happy to show you where that is. But that is where your course material will be. And getting back to the relationship part, you as part of this relationship, you are the student. Your part in the relationship is to fully engage. You need to show up to classes, you need to do the work, you need to hand it in on time, and you need to use the resources that are available to you. That is your job. An important part of any relationship is good communication. A big part of this is email, and you will get lots of those. Email is the primary communication method between you and the university community. You already have established an email that was your preferred address along with your original application to the University of Victoria. That email, that preferred email that you have as part of that original account that you did when you applied, that email will continue to be used by the university unless you change it to something different. Personally, I recommend that you establish a UVic email, which is part of your NetLink ID that you will establish, which again, you will hear more about that in the Registration 101 videos. But the NetLink, your UVic email address, so johnsmith@uvic.ca, whatever it is that you choose. My recommendation is that you set your @uvic.ca email as the email address that is the preferred email address that the university communicates with. And the reason why I say that is because you've had your personal email address forever. So for every social media account you've ever signed up for, every distribution list that you've signed up for, where every gaming site that you've ever been on that you've done a registration for where you have an email, all of that personal communication is going into that email address. If you don't change that, then all of your university correspondence will also go into that email address. And it's a mess. If you change it to an @uvic.ca email address, then you know that everything going into that email address is to do with the university. Now, granted, you will get emails from the university from the various different student listservs of information. But the one thing that I can absolutely assure you is that your academic advisors and your instructors do not email you by accident. If you're getting emails from individuals like your academic advisor, your co-op coordinator, your instructor, that communication is important. And that university email account, you should be reading daily. And some of it's going to be like, okay, I can read that later. That's a newsletter. No problem. I can read that later. But, oh, this is from my instructor. Oh, this is from my co-op coordinator. I need to read that. I need to deal with that. And just know that I didn't get your email or I didn't read your email is not a legitimate excuse for not doing something that's expected of you. It's expected that you will engage in that communication. The other thing that I did as part of this presentation is I reached out to current first-year students and I said, give me some feedback about your experience this year. More specifically, what advice would you give to a new incoming first year class? If you could have had a conversation with yourself 8 months ago, what would be the advice that you would give to yourself or to a new first year student coming into the program? And I wanted to show you a little bit about what they said. So here's a few things that they said. I wish someone told me how important deadlines are and how time management affects stress levels. It's really important to stay ahead on assignments and deadlines. Don't hesitate to ask questions of your professors and peers. Learn how to cook. Create a schedule for managing your time. Focus on midterms and stay ahead of new content. Review all course material well in advance. Do all sample and practice problems and get enough sleep. So those are a few things that the class ahead of you suggested that you do. We're at the home stretch now, and I'm almost done. And I wanted to thank you again so much for your patience and your attention while you're listening to me today. On a final note here, I have created a links document of some links that I think you will need to use fairly quickly and probably often. So I'm just going to share my screen one more time so you could take a look at that. And I've got that up on the screen for you there. If you want to pause this video and even take a look at it when you have a second to do so, if you want to find anything, but I'll just point out what a few of those things are. So up here, registration preparation, I showed you the Registration 101 site. The course registration information, if you go onto the main UVic homepage and just look up course registration, it will take you to this site as well, course information, registration information session. It has a bunch of definitions and a couple of little segmented videos about how-tos of various different things about the registration system, perhaps for you to refer back to after you've done your Registration 101 session. I call this next part university navigation. Basically, I reference the university calendar. By calendar, I mean it's the big published guide of program requirements and the big list of rules and regulations. So that's a very important document that you should definitely be familiar with. The bookstore, the UVic bookstore, because you'll want to know, where do I get my book lists and how do I know what I'm buying with regards to my mandatory materials? The UVic bookstore link is there. I mentioned the UVic important dates. These are not the important dates that are specific to your courses. Those are on your course outlines for each one of your classes, but these are the general important dates that show that apply to everybody. Drop deadlines for dropping classes. When is the exam period going to be? When is reading break? What are the days that the universities are closed? But most importantly is the drop deadlines and things like that are on there, and term start date, term end dates, things like that. The academic advising link that you see there is that academic advising page that I showed you on the Faculty of Engineering and Computer Sciences website. That link I showed you had contacts to the advisors, how to book appointments, program planning worksheets, all of that is there. The BC Transfer Guide, how that might be relevant to you for those students that have potentially done AP courses, advanced placement courses, or IB courses in their high school, or potentially if you were one of those students that took an advanced college level course while you were in high school. That Transfer Guide link will tell you how the courses transfer to UVic. There's another helpful note there that if you have taken an AP college course or anything like that, you do have to have those official transcripts sent from the AP College Board to UVic because they need to know what your final test score was in the AP course to determine whether or not you have credit for the course. So I've given you a link there to the AP College Board for requesting your transcripts. University Systems and the Learning Library. So the University Systems, that's a link there, and that is a basics. There on there, you'll see a service catalog for students. How to set up your UVic email, how to get your NetLink ID, information about general use computer labs and where are they, where can you do printing if you need to print stuff out on campus, where are there printers that you can use. Brightspace, I mentioned Brightspace once before. That's the primary course platform that all of your courses will end up using. It might not be the only one. There might be other supplementary sites that your courses might want you to use. I know that there's one that's specific for math, but all of the courses, that is the primary course platform is Brightspace. And there is also a link in there as how to navigate Brightspace. So that is also something that you could be taking a look at that stuff now because it's all published online. So again, there's that link about Brightspace there, how to use the platform, etc. And I have a link to it there. And that Learning Strategies library, last but not least, that is an entire library of reference material and examples of strategies that you can use to improve your learning. One very small segment of that is finding time in your schedule, which is the one thing that I showed you today. But there's also information there about just university learning success strategies, about identifying, how do you determine what the key topics are in your courses, and how to map out your time more specifically on a weekly by weekly basis of how you're going to use your time to study those things. There is a plethora of information in that Learning Strategies library for students. And it's all broken down into little segments of how you can go through and digest the material. Again, that can be something that you can even do now before you even come to UVic. You could start taking a look at some of the things that they suggest in there. That's it for me today. So thank you so much for your time and attention today. I hope you've found this planning session useful. After you've taken some time to read through the planning information available to you and viewed the Registration 101 how-to videos, if you have additional questions after you've had a chance to use those resources, you are welcome to contact our office. And we'd be happy to help you. I would say a primary email address that you can use is engr@uvic.ca. Quite simply, engr@uvic.ca. You can send your questions and queries through to that email address, and that comes directly into our engineering undergraduate office. And we will attempt to assist you as best we can. If we are not the person that can assist you with your inquiry, we will certainly forward your message on to those who can. Good luck to you, and welcome to the University of Victoria and the Faculty of Engineering and Computer Science. And we look forward to seeing you in September.